So in this example debate round, you're going to see Josh and myself as the affirmative team. Hello, hello. The negative team will be Marisa and Rainer. Wave Marisa and Rainer. All right. And we're going to do this like an actual debate. Some of you may have never seen a debate round before. And so we're going to pretend like we're doing a debate in a real room against each other. There won't be a judge. You all can be our judges today. We'll be excited for that. And we're going to also, if you want to follow along with the evidence that we're reading, we did put together some directions on this. So there's what we call a pre-flow. So on here, if you click on this link in English or in Spanish, a pre-flow means a note-taking system in which we've written what evidence we're going to use in advance of the debate. So you won't need that for your debate rounds, but you will need a blank flow sheet for your debate rounds so that you can take notes while you go. The reason why we filled this in already is so that you can see what evidence we're going to read and know exactly what cards, what pieces of evidence we're referring to while we debate. All right. If you have questions as we go, please put them in the chat.
Oh wait,
yeah.
One thing, can we show them like the card?
Yeah,
to show them how to read it and stuff.
Yeah, Well, as you read, I'll put the evidence that you read on the screen. All right. And then we're going to use middle school novice times. So we're going to have 3-minute speeches for the constructives and the rebuttals. If you're brand new to debate, every one of the 4 of us will give one constructive speech where we build our arguments and read evidence. We'll also give one rebuttal speech after all of those, where we respond to what the other team has said. And after each of our constructive speeches, there will be a period called cross-examination where the other teams ask each other questions. So when we give our speech, the negative will ask us questions after we give our speech, that kind of thing. All right. And we're using the middle school JV/high school novice packet. If you want to know the exact version, that's what we're reading from. Okay, we're going to jump into the example debate. Yeah. So again, if you've never seen a debate round before, what happens is we have 2 people on the affirmative side, 2 people on the negative side. All right. We're going to be arguing on the affirmative side about why you should do a plan. We're going to try and convince you all. You all are judging us. So your role during this example debate is very important. You have 2 things you need to do. All right. Number 1, pretend like you are the judge. At the end of the debate, we're going to ask you which team you vote for. All right. Number 2, you also need to pretend like you're yourself. If you have questions about what we're debating about, put those in the chat. We'll try and answer those as we go. All right. So we want to make sure that in between the speeches, we're also helping you understand this case. So you're going to judge us at the end, but also ask questions as we go. All right. And I'm going to display the pieces of evidence that are being read on the screen. Josh, can you tell me what pages you're going to be reading? Just the one.
I am going to read pages 6, 7, and 8.
All right. So again, one more time, before Josh starts, he has 3 minutes. He's going to tell you all about why, our affirmative case is important. All right.
I was like, that ain't me. Don't look like phone.
All right. Hang on. Let me just make sure we can see my case. Sure.
Okay. So that's one kind of card. Where did they go?
He just called, but then didn't answer.
All right, folks, while we're setting up, and we have this card here. Has anyone seen one of these before? Has anyone seen one of these things that's on the screen before?
We got lots of hands. That's good.
Lots of hands from the Elliot. I see y'all.
No.
No, I hear some no's.
Yes, from Somerville.
All right. So I don't need to explain how to read this, since everyone has seen one.
Oh, I think you should explain it for me, Josh.
Yes.
Brush me up a little bit.
All right. So there are 3 main important parts to a card. The first most important part is the tag. And what the tag is more or less like a quick summary of what the card is or what is in the card.
Oh, you're good.
All right.
Keep going.
So this first part in black, I wish I could point to it, but the part in black underneath the 1AC, that is what we refer to as the tag, okay? Right after the tag, or technically part of the tag as well, would be the author. So I want to make sure I get the author in, which is highlighted. And last but not least, we have the juicy evidence. And the evidence is everything that is below it. All right. And a rule of thumb for the evidence is that usually it's good to just read the evidence that people bold and underline. So if this is all bolded and underlined, what am I expecting you to do with this evidence? You can unmute and tell me.
Help Josh out.
Help me out.
Use it.
Read it.
Use
right?
it.
Yeah, I'm expecting you to read this, okay? And that's more or less what we're gonna do all the time, or for every piece of evidence that we have. Any questions before we get started? Going once. Can they see me from there? No. Going twice. Sold, all right. Now that we have that out of the way. I'll just do it this way. No, I don't want to sit, I want to stand.
Josh, why are you standing?
Oh, why am I standing? Because I'm ready to speak and I need to speak with power. And the only way to speak with power is to be standing. You're not going to take me seriously or anyone seriously if they're sitting down trying to tell you something really important. So I'm going to stand so that I can project and have maximum, you can hear me speaking, but I'm not yelling. Or at least I hope I'm not yelling. I am Josh Nixon, like the president, no relation, most of you probably don't know President Nixon, but I am representing the first affirmative speaker, and I am going to be giving the first affirmative constructive, which is the 1AC part, okay?
And all you should be taking notes on this, right? You're writing down what Josh says.
Mm-hmm. All right.
Recording in progress.
Cool. To just kind of give an overview of what we're talking about, right? I know if you're familiar with hydrogen, give me a thumbs up. If you're familiar with hydrogen, give me a thumbs up. I would like to see some thumbs and some hands so I can determine how far I need to go. I see some washes. I see a lot of washes. I see a thumb with a tongue. Okay. I'm looking at Xylus. I see a lot. All right. So hydrogen is one of the most abundant elements in the earth, in the atmosphere, et cetera, et cetera. And right now, climate change is a really big problem. I believe that everyone there has probably had a class or two in the science of what's happening with the world right now in terms of the climate. I would believe so. And in that vein, there are solutions that are out right now, like wind or solar, that can kind of get us the amount of energy that we need, but it doesn't quite get there. So me and my partner are proposing that we go to the Alaskan Arctic to develop for hydrogen energy. And I'll start with what's happening right now in that field. And right now, the Alaskan Arctic has a lot of potential to have a lot of hydrogen, right? And increasing development for these projects is crucial because there's a lot of untapped environment, a lot of untapped hydrogen in the environment. As the card states, I'll only read like a sentence or two. We bump into hydrogen every second of our lives. It's colorless, odorless. It makes up about 75% of everything. Mark Myers, who's a really, really legit geologist, someone who studies rocks and who studies like the formation of certain Earth's, structures and stuff, believes that there's a lot of geologic, so like hydrogen in the Earth of Alaska specifically. Move on to the next card. Okay. So I'm just kind of setting the stage of like why Alaska. I believe that I said this before, but climate change is a huge threat. It's a global threat and it's accelerating. Large-scale reductions in climate emissions are critical to avoid devastating environmental impacts on the world. And this comes from the IPCC, it's like International Policy for Climate Change, something like that, 2021. And more or less the body of this evidence says that scientists are observing changes in the Earth's climate in every region across the whole climate system, according to latest Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change report released today. Many of the changes observed in climate change are unprecedented, thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of years. So over all of the time that we know, this period of time when the Industrial Revolution really started to kick up is when climate change really started to become a significant problem. So humans caused it. Yep. And so thus we propose the following plan. This is the affirmative plan. And it is the United States federal government should significantly increase its development of hydrogen fuel infrastructure in the Alaskan Arctic. And this last part is, why did we choose this plan, right? Why does everything kind of come together? And hydrogen is not only abundant, but it's key to solving climate change. This is from Neswat. As y'all know, I'm really bad at names. 22. China's hydrogen demand has exploded, and many of the current hydrogen energy production technologies are likely to become affordable and scalable and energy efficient means in the medium term. And all of this card is really saying is that hydrogen is a key, is more key than any other renewable energy source that we could have, because not only is it abundant, but as we'll get into later, the byproduct of using this fuel is water vapor, which is basically clean air. And I will cede there to Cross-X.
All right, so now we're all going to stand. We're going to do an open cross-examination. The questions will mainly be aimed at Josh because he's the one who gave the speech. But both partners on the negative team can ask questions. Both partners on the affirmative team can answer them.
All right.
And we'll just do, for time purposes, like 2 questions.
2 questions. I have a combined question.
Sounds good.
That's 2 questions.
Question is, where is hydrogen found?
It's found in like various like pockets in the earth. It could be found also in water as a byproduct of like separating oxygen from the hydrogen. So it's like literally everywhere.
It's everywhere. Okay, so why go to the Arctic for this?
Well, there's very few people in the Arctic. There's a lot of space in the Arctic. So being able to go there and get those resources is like huge, because we're not really disturbing anything. We're just going there to gain better resources, as in hydrogen.
And one more.
Yes,
You make the claim that wind and solar is not enough. How do you support that claim?
Well, we would argue that wind and solar power are great and can still be expanded, but the only way wind and solar power can be used right now is by storing that energy they produce in batteries for electricity. Those batteries on a large scale are very, very heavy, so they cannot power large things like airplanes, right? Wind and solar power is never going to be capable of flying a plane, but hydrogen could, and that would be the only type of clean energy that currently is capable of powering things that are large, like airplanes.
We've seen our time. Thank you.
So in the pre-flow of the debate round, so Marisa is going to read pages 21, 22, and 28. All right. And there's also a note about how she's going to respond to the first part of the argument. So 21, 22, and 28 is what I will pull up here. I'm going to share the evidence again, and go ahead, Marisa.
Okay. Judges, the affirmative team laid out a problem and they laid out a plan. We, the negative team, agree with the problem. Of course, climate change is a global issue. It is arguably the biggest issue to face humanity and actually life beyond humanity on this earth. We disagree vehemently with the plan for several reasons. First, the climate is past the point of saving. We must adapt to inevitable climate change impacts. This is from Parag Khanna, November 19th, 2021. First of all, this concept of adaptation, what the affirmative is talking about is trying to address the root cause of climate change, reducing emissions and making more clean energy. There is already wind and solar that are towards that effort, but the bigger effort that we need to focus on is adaptation and resilience, responding to the effects of climate change in the here and now to people living in the here and now, including in the Arctic. 191 nations have pledged to make all efforts to keep global temperature rise below 2 degrees, and more than 100 billion have been pledged to help developing countries transition their economies. Still, the fact remains that climate conditions will get worse before they get better, if they ever recover at all. So once again, the root cause is worthy of addressing, but the bigger issue, the bigger harm of climate change is what's happening to people, especially the most vulnerable people in the here and now. I'm going to continue to the next card.
What page number is that?
This is on page 22.
Thank you.
This is a global problem, but we only need to look to our backyard here in Boston to see the effects. Boston is focusing on adaptation wisely in its response to climate change. This is from the Climate Ready Boston, December 2016, and you can see it on the website. They continually update. Boston recognized the threat of climate change early and has pursued an integrated approach to address it. Over the last 15 years, the city has led a range of efforts to reduce emissions citywide. However, even under the most optimistic projections, Boston faces serious risks from climate change and must adapt. And this card goes through all the different ways they focus, especially on flooding and on extreme heat. Those of you who are at the debate camp heard from people from the City of Boston Climate Resilience who focus on those two efforts. Those are expensive. Those are important. They affect people in the here and now. And that's why we need to focus our resources in communities in Boston, but across the world, rather than a far-fetched plan such as the affirmatives. Finally, speaking of the far-fetched plan, I'm going to go to my final card, page 28. Powering a community with diesel costs a few $1 million, while powering a community with hydrogen would cost a few $100 million and require more storage than currently exists. This is Whitney 22. This is saying this plan is not realistic, it costs too much, and it pulls resources from more efficient energy, and again, from climate resilience affecting people in the here and now. Whitney says, I'll admit I love the idea of using Alaska's abundant summer solar resources to generate enough energy to produce hydrogen for communities' long, cold winters, but is that possible? Whitney goes on to argue that it is not possible. For example, 400,000 kilograms of hydrogen would require about 5 megawatts of additional generation, assuming a 6-month summer production period. To put this in perspective, there are currently a few negative 0.5 megawatt sized solar photovoltaic arrays. So basically, what would be required to make the AFS plan work using hydrogen to actually power a community is so costly, it is so far from where we are in reality right now that it would be unrealistic, and it would also divert key resources, take key money and energy and resources away from addressing climate change in the here and now, resilience, adaptation, helping people who are suffering the effects right now.
From the affirmative team, we'll ask the negative team questions this time. And we'll ask 2 questions. Go ahead.
Sure. My first question is how has Boston adapted to climate change successfully?
So there's 2 main reasons. The big effects in Boston, and they are different across the world, but in Boston, the big main effects are flooding because of rising sea levels and also extreme heat.
So how does Boston like solve for extreme heat?
So as people who are at the debate camp learned over the summer, there are cooling areas and increased access to air-conditioned spaces, especially for the most vulnerable populations, the elderly, children, especially infants, and people in lower income communities. So it's expanding the access in those extreme.
So burning fossil fuels in one way is solving for the consequences of burning fossil fuels the other way?
No,
Like
it's not the
AC
only
is
thing
like-
at all. So there are also grant programs that are in place currently to help homeowners to make their homes more efficient as well, so that it's even less ACs being used.
Okay,
to
thank
actually
you.
come
Roger,
back.
do you have another question?
No, that's our time.
Oh,
Thank you.
no.
Thank you.
Have another question?
I was gonna start cooking.
That's all right. You
All right. So I'm gonna
It's
check the
separate.
chat and see. Okay, all right. Oh, all right. We got a nice question in the chat about finding a different way to deal with this. I like that. How do you answer questions so smoothly? A good question as well. So just taking these in order from the Mary Lyon School, there are a lot of ways to potentially deal with this issue, and we want you to read the evidence packet to learn about different possibilities. Also, do some research on different ways to solve this. The affirmative will always argue that hydrogen is a good way to solve this. The negative will say there are a lot of different ways. So that's a great question. Laselli said, how do you answer questions so smoothly? So the answer for us is we prepared really well. We actually looked at this and debated this the first time a few months ago. So we've been looking at this case for a long time. The more that you debate it, the more confident you will get in your answers. Are hydrogen going to be used for fusion or burning? Typically, we're going to aim at burning hydrogen. And when we burn hydrogen, burning is sort of a a tricky word in this situation, but when we use it as fuel, what comes out when we burn hydrogen is water vapor. And then finally, are you saying that because we're helping climate change, we should make things get worse? Yes, that's what affirmative is saying, that the negative, if we ignore climate change, it will continue to get worse.
Yeah.
Right, but the negative has a response to that.
That's true.
All right. Time to argue that later.
Thank you for all your questions in the chat. Please keep them coming. And we're going to go on to the 2AC. I'm going to be the 2AC, and I'm going to read pages 17. I'm going to read page 14. Can you grab that there for me? And then I'm going to read page 13 as well. And the reason why I'm reading these is that they respond to what Marisa has said.
You said 14.
Yep. I'm reading them a little bit out of order because I'm going to try and read them in the order that Marisa made her arguments. So 17 and then 14 and 13. What I'm doing now that Marisa and Josh also did before me is called giving a roadmap. I'm explaining to the judge what I'm going to be reading in what order, so it's easier for the judge to follow my arguments, right? One of the most important things in a debate is for the judge to follow your arguments effectively. If they can't tell what you're saying, they're not going to vote for your team. So that's why I want to be really clear to you all as the judges what I'm about to read. Okay. And I don't see any more questions in the chat or anything, so I'm just going to go into my speech. Hello, judges. I'm Roger. I'm representing the affirmative team, and I'm going to tell you all about why you should vote for us. So my first argument is from page 17, that hydrogen can complement other forms of renewable energy by providing energy storage options. And as projects scale up, the cost will fall. This is from the Arctic Energy Office in 2024. So I'm going to start right in the second paragraph here. Hydrogen is one of the few solutions for long duration storage, from weeks to months, of renewable power. A desirable quality in a place like Alaska that has an abundance of solar energy in summer months, but much less potential in the winter. And I'm going to stop the card there. I'm also going to read a little bit further down. The U.S. Department of Energy hydrogen hubs represent an investment of $7 billion to support hydrogen operations around the country. A key expectation from these projects is that costs will fall with scale up, particularly as storage and distribution of hydrogen becomes more readily available. What my evidence is saying is two things that are very important. The negative team has said that my project is too costly. I'm showing that costs are going to go down over time with this evidence. The other thing my opponent has said is there might be other ways to deal with this. We should invest in other forms of renewable energy. Well, if we invest in hydrogen, that also helps invest in wind and solar, because hydrogen fuel can be a way that we can convert wind and solar power into hydrogen fuel to store it better. Right now, I talked about with airplanes how hydrogen is better than a battery for operating something like an airplane. Well, you can convert wind and solar power into hydrogen power with more complicated processes, and that's a way that we can maximize all of these things. I'm going on to page 14. Adaptation will cost $38 trillion to prevent and repair damages over the next 25 years, while effective mitigation will only cost $6 trillion. That's from Kotz et al., 2024. All right, and I'm going to read directly from the bottom of the first paragraph. Under a middle-of-the-road scenario of future income development, this corresponds to a global annual damages in 2049 of $38 trillion. Essentially, what this piece of evidence is saying, and in a longer speech, I would read more of this evidence. What this piece of evidence is saying is that although we are doing things right now to adapt to climate change, those are much more expensive than trying to solve climate change and stop climate change from happening. If we can slow down climate change, we are going to not have to adapt to the negative heat and flooding scenarios, okay? And finally, on to page 13. Alaska is open to more sources of renewable energy because it's experiencing warming at a faster rate and has experienced failures in other types of energy production. That's from Burnton 24. And I'm just going to read the first sentence here. Alaska is warming at more than twice the rate of the lower 48 states. So you might be asking, why Alaska? Rainer asked that in the first question here. Why Alaska? Because Alaska needs this the most right now. So it's the best place to start investing in this energy because they're experiencing global warming twice as fast as the rest of the United States. And I'm done with my speech.
That's right. That's my partner. Let's go.
All right. So now we're
Oh,
gonna
no.
stand up for cross-examination.
Just to start, so with Alaska, you said
Does
so.
Marisa have a question?
No, my partner does first, then I will.
With Alaska, you already said that it is experiencing twice the rate of global warming. So why go and build more infrastructure that would require more pollution? And because you have to drill, you have to do a bunch of things. Why go pollute Alaska more if it's already experiencing this fast rate of global warming?
I think that's a great question. We believe that the process of mining for hydrogen is much cleaner than what you might think of for mining for coal or oil, something like that. It's actually not as damaging to the
But it
environment.
will
as you
still
think.
produce pollution, right?
I would
It
even,
will, but not as much.
I would even argue that like even the initial cost of the pollution that has started through it will be mitigated and wiped out. over
Where's the
long
evidence for
term
that?
use. We have the evidence when we.
Okay, next time, please provide it.
Yes.
You have a question?
Yes, so you argued that the cost of hydrogen, you acknowledged, first of all, our argument that it is highly costly. You said that it will go down over time.
Yes.
What's your time frame for that? How can you support that plan that it will go down over time, and how long will that take?
Sure. So I'm going to refer you back to page 17, where my piece of evidence says that the cost will fall as the projects scale up. So our proposal is to scale the projects quickly, which means we believe the cost will also fall quickly. Now, it is not stated in the piece of evidence, but our timelines, our evidence says that as we scale up projects, the cost will fall. We plan to build quickly, so the cost will fall quickly.
I have a clarifying
question.
question in the
Yes.
chat. The
Yes,
question is,
excellent.
could you clarify what you said about wind and solar converted into hydrogen?
Excellent. Yeah, so we're gonna stop the cross-examination there.
Yep.
And just to answer that question
No.
in the chat, yes, the way that wind and solar power are currently stored is in batteries, right? They create electricity which gets stored in batteries. A different way that we could use it is if you take the wind and solar power from those batteries, instead of using it to charge a battery, you can use that to take hydrogen that is found in the air, hydrogen that's part of methane gas, hydrogen that's part of water right now, through a process called electrolysis. You can use that electricity from wind and solar power to turn water into pure hydrogen. Once it's turned into pure hydrogen, you can store it in a tank, and hydrogen will stay in a tank much longer and without as much need for like continued basically you can keep hydrogen in a tank much longer than you can keep a battery charged, essentially. Yeah.
Great, thanks. You want to swap so you can go back?
Okay. Yeah. All right, so now we're going to go on to our second negative constructive. This is, again, for those of you seeing your first debate round ever, this is the this is the last constructive speech. So the last time you'll see us heavily relying on evidence, and the last time that we will follow a speech with cross-examination. So Rainer, when you're ready.
I'm gonna kind of explain a little bit what's been going on in the debate.
Sounds good.
Yeah, so as you've seen, Josh went, and then Marisa went, and then Roger went, and I'm gonna go. So as a pattern, after the one team speaks, it's always gonna be a negative, except for the next speech we will also explain as well. So here, my job is going to be to try to respond to exactly what Roger has said, but also to further what my partner has said as well, push those forward, and also touch on what Josh has said. So that's gonna be the last speech, as Roger mentioned, where it's like you can really use evidence to do so. So that's what I'm gonna attempt to do here. So I'm gonna start.
Sorry, before you start, can you just tell me what pages you're gonna use so I can show those on the screen?
I'm gonna be using 30, 24, and 31. I'm gonna start with 30. I know that's not as listed here. I'm gonna start with 30.
Sounds good.
Yeah. It's like 3:30, right?
Yep.
All right, let's just start. So right now, the affirmative is trying to tell you this story that, hey, climate change is a real issue and we need to like invest in hydrogen to actually solve this problem. That's the thing. We agree 100% climate change is an issue. We're not contending that at all. The only thing where we differ is like, how do you actually solve it, right? But I gotta tell you, judges, the affirmative team is hiding a secret. They have not told you that in order, this is page 30, in order to access enough hydrogen to power our lives, it will need a lot of initial fossil fuel investment which accelerates climate change impacts. So please refer to what Roger said about the fact that Alaska already has a lot of global warming happening twice the rate. So why would you bring this exactly to their doorsteps to do so? And we know they don't need to do that. How do I know that? Their own evidence told me. That's how I find out. On their own evidence, on page 8, they said that India is looking to become a global player in hydrogen. They don't have access to the Arctic. And the United Kingdom recently launches this hydrogen strategy aiming to replace hydrogen carbon based energy sources with cleaner energy sources. Again, another country that does not have access to the Arctic. So we know from their own evidence, we don't need to go to the Arctic to do so. And when I asked Josh during cross-ex, like, hey, where is hydrogen found? To quote, everywhere. We can do it in places that's not already warming up. So that's the thing I'm gonna first highlight. So that's with my evidence on Oko and Hemberg 22, which I just read. And the purpose of our study is to improve the understanding of the role of hydrogen leakage in undermining the climate benefits of the deployment of clean hydrogen alternatives to replace fossil fuel technologies. We evaluate hydrogen climate consequences in 3 ways: its warming potency relative to carbon dioxide, the warming impact of its leakage compared with that from the avoided emissions of fossil fuel technologies, and the absolute warming impacts for future levels of demand and leakage. I'm going to cut the card there. Again, that part cannot be ignored. We're not saying that part about the fact that they would have to make things worse before things can maybe get better, because they also didn't tell you there's a lot of different types of hydrogen, and a lot of the ones that they're talking about are the dirty kind, which uses a lot of fossil fuel. Next, I'm gonna move on to continue further my partner's point about the fact that if we invest in this plan, which my partner has already showed that costs a lot of money.
Can you just give me the page number?
Yeah, that is page 24. It will divert resources from the actual things that are currently helping people right now. They want to sell you this story about like what could happen. We're talking about what's actually happening. Like these programs are in place in Boston to help homeowners with these cooling places, to build barriers to help with flooding. And that is on page 24, it says, it is much more expensive to run a car with hydrogen fuel than it is to run a car with traditional gas-powered hybrid cars. Again, highlighting the fact that it costs a lot of money to do this. Hydrogen fuel cell vehicles are zero-emission vehicles, which comply with California's ZEV mandate. However, if you look at what is the cost per hydrogen, it's like $16 versus like a $3 you can do for gas. My last point here, Alaska does not need this. You heard this from my opponents themselves. They said Alaska is already leading in solar, and also, they forgot to mention, and also in wind. Wind is year-round. They're going to try to make the point that solar, it's not always sunny, but it's always windy over there. So they don't need this. You don't need to bring more fossil fuel drilling to help convert these things to hydrogen that they're trying to do. So I rest my case, and this is why you should consider voting for us instead of the secret that they're hiding, that they're going to go and destroy Alaska.
Yeah. Here.
Good job.
Yeah, play it right for sure. All right.
Okay. So this one is really more of a question for the judges to consider, but I'm going to ask it to the negative team. Which neighborhoods in Boston would you like to tear up to do this mining for hydrogen locally?
It doesn't have to happen in Boston proper.
And in fact, we're not arguing that mining for hydrogen should happen, period. We're
Yeah.
talking about invest in the existing wind and solar and other green energy, as well as in resilience.
Okay, so it's like a not in my backyard situation.
Not at all. Not at all. I'm not saying that.
Said it should not happen,
Our
period.
vision is very different. We're saying invest in adaptation things. But if you want to pursue your plan, I just think Alaska happens to be the worst place to go do it.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying.
Thank you.
All right.
Josh.
Okay.
I can ask one more if you want.
Yeah.
All right. So, very simply put, we stated earlier that you need hydrogen to be able to fuel more things than we can currently fuel with a clean energy source. Do you think it's important for us to be able to power everything with clean energy, or are you okay with not being able to fuel some things with clean energy?
It is very important to be able to power everything, but you are selling on a vision of like where hydrogen might get. I'm gonna sell you on the vision where battery technology might get, where it gets to be efficient enough that we can also power everything with battery technology. So since you want to like dream, I can dream up a different future as well.
And if you're talking about what hydrogen needs to power, the examples that you gave are all things that also cause tremendous carbon footprint. Flying a plane is one of the worst things you can do for the environment. So having clean energy and putting an investment to something that does that. So against your aims here.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Radar,
All right.
radar flies and travels everywhere, by the way. I ain't saying that has to impact
Not relevant to the debate.
the Globetrotting.
Not relevant to the debate.
All right, so we're gonna go back into the rebuttals. What I'm going to do for the purpose of the rebuttals is I'm going to show the free flow for the debate round. So you can see all the evidence that's been read so far. All right. Let me see if I can make this a little bigger, actually. All right, here's all the evidence that's been read so far. So again, if you're following along with the debate, these are the pieces of evidence that we have read. Okay, just kind of pointing to it. I'm going to use my mouse here. Josh read page 6, page 7, and page 8. All right, then Marisa responded with pages 21, 22, and 28. Just delete that so it can all fit on one page. There we go. I responded in the second affirmative speech with pages 17, 14, and 13. And finally, Rainer read pages 30, 24, and 31. Okay. So what we're going to do now is, as the debaters, we're going to look at this and say, this is what has been read so far in the debate. We're going to do our best to continue making the arguments that we think are the strongest and respond to our opponent's strongest arguments as well. And I'll let Marisa explain the rest from there.
Yes, so also, as Rainer talked about, usually it alternates affirmative, negative, affirmative, negative. The one difference is the negative gets to go twice. That's kind of like a negative, like an advantage for the negative. But the affirmative, on the other hand, gets to both begin and end the debate. So that's kind of the benefit for the affirmative. Plus the affirmative has the burden to show that the plan will make the world a better place. So that's why that changed. But I'm going to start by explaining giving my roadmap. So judges, you have heard in this debate, the affirmative has laid out a problem that we agree is a problem for our times, perhaps the biggest problem that we are facing, which is climate change. They have also laid out a plan that is far-fetched, it is far-flung, and it is not caring for the people suffering in the here and now, and it is the plan that we disagree with. The affirmative, to remind you, has argued that we should invest in the development of this very expensive and yet unproven energy resource of hydrogen, using that ultimately to create clean green energy in the Alaskan Arctic. We argue that this is not realistic. First of all, it is too expensive, as both my partner and I claimed, including my partner who quoted Gary Yowell, September 2022. It is much more expensive to run a car with hydrogen fuel than cars with hybrid cars or traditional gas powered. I also talked about communities not being able to run on hydrogen. Even as my partner pointed out, the evidence from our opponent has said and acknowledged that hydrogen is extremely expensive, not only to extract the energy, but also to build out what's called the infrastructure, the machines and the knowledge to be able to do that. So when I asked them, because our opponents said, well, it will go down over time if we invest quickly. That is an unrealistic plan, judges. It is not possible to scale up quickly something of what they're proposing because we do not yet have the infrastructure in place to do so. Next, we talked about focusing on resilience or adaptation, helping what's happening in the here and now. That does not mean we are ignoring climate change. As the example from the city of Boston gives in what I read, there are resilience efforts that also are about building in, for example, more plants and trees to build more shade, but also address the roots of climate change as well. But ultimately, it is helping people who are suffering from extreme heat, extreme weather, flooding, hurricanes, loss of their homes, and it is focusing important resources on that.
All right, nice job. Okay, so again, unlike the constructive, we don't have any cross-examination here, but we do want to continue to answer questions in the chat. So as those come through, please go ahead and ask them. We'll check the chat right now. All right, nothing yet. Okay. So we're going to turn it over to the first affirmative rebuttal, which is from Josh.
You said you gave yourself 2 minutes?
I did, and then I went another like 10 seconds.
Is there any more questions?
Nope, all good.
All right, I have the 2 minute rebuttal, and I also have what would be referred to as the hardest speech in debate, which is the 1AR, literally the speech after the what we refer to as the Neg Block, because they got to speak for a constructive speech, and then they got to speak for rebuttal. So now I have to try my best to respond to all of those arguments, and in those 2 minutes that I have when they had like 6. But just a quick roadmap. I'm going to cover the 2 major things about this debate. It's going to come down to climate change, the climate change impact, and also the cost impact. And I'll start with the climate change first. All right. So I think our opponents misunderstood a little bit what we were saying when we were talking about hydrogen being everywhere. So I think that I'll take a little bit of time to clarify that. Yes, hydrogen is everywhere. We did say that, and we do agree that that's true. However, there are places that are much better to get hydrogen versus other places to not get hydrogen. For example, there could be hydrogen in the Midwest, or there could be hydrogen like in Russia or somewhere else, and it would be almost impossible to difficult to not get it. So going to Alaska, which is a big question as to why to go to Alaska. Alaska is in the United States, and therefore going to Alaska is great. However, the other arguments that I want to make is they said that we said that climate change gets bad there, and we agree, which is all the more reason to go there and to try to help, right? Like if we know that the problem is worse there, why would we literally try to go anywhere else to solve the problem? Also, they talked about the short-term impacts that mining for hydrogen would have, and we agree that those short-term impacts exist. However, the long-term benefit of switching from fossil fuels to hydrogen at the end of it all is water vapor, not CO2, water vapor. So everything can burn completely clean, and therefore we don't have a climate change problem at all. And I make this akin to like, and they also bring up adaptation, right? They say that Boston's adapting. Well, first of all, it's just Boston. How is the adaptation technique for Boston going to be the same for, I don't know, the Midwest or anywhere that's like not on the coast, because we're in the coast. And also Massachusetts is rare because we have a lot of money. So we can probably do these things that other coastal countries, states that are broke can't do. And lastly, as far as the climate change, it's like if you're sick, right? You get chronic headaches every day. Do you want to take Tylenol, or do you want to go to the doctor to fix the problem, period? Like, yes, you could take Tylenol, it'll be a little less expensive, but you're not going to actually get to the issue of climate change or the headache unless you go to the doctor. Now to move on to the cost really quick. We don't disagree that it is going to be expensive to build and develop all the infrastructure and all that jazz. We don't disagree, but just because it costs a lot of money, does that mean that we shouldn't do it at all? Like, it costs a lot of money to maintain our military. Does that mean that we should just, stop spending money on the military or any of the other services that we take, that we use? So I'm going to make sure I don't use too much time, but I think I'm over time. Vote app.
All right. I don't see any questions in the chat. So what we're doing currently is called, prep time. We're getting ready for our final speeches. For those of you who have never debated before, prep time, you get a certain amount of time in a middle school debate. It's 5 minutes. In a high school debate, it's 8 minutes. And you can use that whenever you want in the debate round. A lot of teams will choose to save that prep time for the most important speeches right at the end of the debate to leave the judges walking away with something they remember. But you can use it whenever you want. If you really haven't figured out what you're going to read in your first speech, use it before your first speech. If you haven't figured out what you're going to do in the middle of the debate, use it in the middle of the debate. You get to decide. You say, Judge, I want to use 1 minute. and then I'm gonna save my 4 minutes for later. And then the next time it's your team's turn to speak, you tell them how much time you want to use again. And you can use that 5 minutes or that 8 minutes over the course of the debate to get ready. All right. How we doing, negative team?
Yes, but just in response to that.
You got 90 seconds.
We do have a quick question, Rainer. Can you address this one in the chat right on the screen before you go into your
You don't
speech?
read the evidence verbatim. Can you still bring up the non-set parts of in the rebuttals? The actual judges not us don't have the cards. Some arguments you said in the rebuttals
That's a
technically
great question.
the evidence because the only
Who
thing
read
we
that?
earlier was the tag. Is that legit? That's a great question. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
So Rainer will have more thoughts, I'm sure, but I would just say, yes, it's legit, period, end of sentence. The reason why is because any argument where the idea of the argument is introduced in the constructive speeches can then be expanded on in the rebuttal speeches. If you want to say, I talked about this earlier, and now I'm going to fully make it clear what I was talking about, that can be done in the rebuttals. What you don't want to do is if you never said anything about it in the constructive speeches, you
And never
cannot then
quoted
go
that
read
part.
that
Yeah.
later. But if you introduce the idea of it, you can expand on it by reading more of the card. Even if you
However-
didn't read anything.
I'll say, however, you can still try to make that argument that is just like, if you want, this is the thing with debate, you have a lot of latitude to like try to make different types of arguments. So, but that I think is our official position because you do get to see it and you know what they were referencing. So yeah, you can definitely use it even if you didn't read it. But that doesn't mean you just should just read the tags and not read the body of the card though. Like you should still want to. That's still a better way to debate than just read the tag. But if you are running out of time, it's something you can do.
Yes, and judges are told that you need to read the evidence as well. So just reading the taglines won't convince a judge that your argument is any stronger. All right.
I'm watching you, bro.
Okay, I'm putting 2 minutes
That looks like 2:01.
so I can go from there. Let's see if ready. All right, judges. You live here. You know how the summers are like here in Boston. You know that we're a coastal city. So you know that the problems that my partner highlighted are very real. The summers being really hot and then the flooding that can happen. So for us, we're talking about like 2 different visions, right? Their vision is like we're trying to address the same thing. Climate change is a problem. We agree with that. But they want to peddle this false dream of like, let's just invest in hydrogen, right? Which we've already highlighted, if you invest in hydrogen, it'll definitely you need fossil fuel to invest in hydrogen, which will make it worse. And they want to take that and go to the Arctic to do so, which they've already said is warming up at twice the speed, right? Why? It's so strange that they would want to take that and go somewhere that's already warming up at twice the speed. I don't think they understand how global warming works. You could do it anywhere else, and we know this is the case because the evidence shows this. So the thing you are left to wonder is like, which vision is more compelling, right? Us trying to address real issues right now, or them trying to like imagine a vision where it's like this may not work, and it would actually make people's lives worse as well. So the other thing that they mentioned is they forget to mention is like this is a global problem, right? So even if you were to buy their vision that hey, we can invest in hydrogen, which we do not need to because making things worse, you will still have to believe that they'll be able to influence other nations to actually do the same thing to address this root cause they're talking about. For us, we're just talking about, hey, let's address this here. And Boston was just an example that we give. It doesn't mean that this is the only place it's happening. We just know that it's past the point where we can fully solve everything. So we also must learn how to live with it. And just to go to his example of going to the doctor, let's talk about that. It's like going to a doctor to try literally a medication that we know does not work and would actually make things worse for you. That is what hydrogen does because you need a lot of fossil fuel to do so. Fossil fuel equals bad. They use that. You have to remember, does their plan make the world a better place? It does not. It actually speeds up warming in the Arctic and it keeps us from investing in real things that would improve our lives in Boston and around the world. I rest my case. Thank you. What Neg?
That was all right.
Yeah.
But he definitely put words in our mouth, but it's all good.
What?
What? Yeah, because you know you did.
All right. Any questions before we do the final, the 2AR?
Best speech and debate. Because I am the 1AR.
I'm not seeing any questions, so I think we should just launch into it. Can you pull up 2 minutes for me?
Yeah, sure.
My phone's being funny.
No. Let me give you 201 later. I saw that, bro. You think you're slick.
All right. So judges,
You gonna give a roadmap first?
yes, I'll give a quick roadmap. I'm going to, judges, I'm going to remind you exactly all the different parts of the debate that have happened so far, and answer my opponent's arguments in order. That's good enough for a roadmap.
All right.
Okay, so judges, we are asking you to vote for the idea of investing in infrastructure to grow hydrogen as a fuel source. We're not asking for hydrogen to be used to power every single thing in the world, like a car or a toothbrush or your smartphone. All right. What we're looking to do is replace the parts of our world that cannot, the fuel sources in our world that cannot currently be replaced in a clean way, right? Wind and solar are failing to, cannot be used to fly planes. They cannot be used to operate heavy machinery. We need a new solution that can expand the way that we address climate change, okay? And that is hydrogen fuel. Specifically answering the 2NR points, all right? We don't believe that this is a false dream. We believe that there are changes that can happen right now. There are cars in California right now powered by hydrogen fuel, all right? This is a real fuel source. It has been used for decades. It was used to power rockets in the 1960s. Okay, this is a real fuel source available now. Alaska needs this help, so we're focusing on that. 40 seconds.
Yep.
Alaska needs this help, so we're focusing on doing the work there. That's why we think Alaska makes sense. Also, it's a gigantic state that has tons and tons of hydrogen deposits. That was from our very first card on page 6. So that is why it's a good place to focus on.
Short-term versus long-term.
Short-term versus long-term, adaptation versus mitigation argument. Thank you. We believe that we need to solve climate change long-term. The Band-Aids that we need to fix are going to keep getting bigger and bigger. Climate change will keep getting worse unless we do something. Yes, we might be able to be resilient against climate change now, but what if it gets worse? What if it's not just a couple of storms per year that we have flooding for? What if it's every single day? Right? We need to address climate change now, and we think we presented a realistic way. Vote affirmative.
Yeah, we
Now shake hands.
Yes, good job.
First, you did great. All right.
Okay, so debaters who are still watching, if you're doing the evidence activity, you can keep going with that. Debaters, if you're still watching the debate, what we need you to do now is independently, this is all judges, this is how debates with multiple judges work. Independently, you need to decide if you vote for the affirmative or the negative. All right, don't talk with the people around you yet. You can talk about your decision afterwards, but write down on a piece of paper or put it in the chat if you vote affirmative or negative, because you may have seen something different in the debate that caused you to vote one way, and the person next to you might have felt like a different argument was more important to them, so they vote the other way. That happens in our debate rounds as well. Sometimes you might be in a room with with more than one judge. They will all vote independently. They won't talk about their decision and vote as one. So go ahead, vote right now. We're going to give you 2 minutes to make your decision.